Okay, hello. My name is Mario Lozoya. I am the president of Lozoya Consulting.
And Mario, you've been involved in a meeting today, a very in-depth meeting, lasted more than a few hours, with the Hidalgo County Prosperity Task Force, a subgroup within that task force. We all know the task force is about fighting poverty. Hidalgo County Judge Richard Cortez set it up. But today specifically, you've been drilling down on the sort of industries the Valley needs to go after, or the county needs to go after. Tell us about today and your involvement in it.
Right. I think first I want to thank Mario Reina and the Prosperity Task Force people, and I think that and I believe that the judge has a great vision, and I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to share some of my experiences in supporting that vision. So today there were some economic developers from around the county that were invited, including other entities that would support with some experience, with some information. And so today what we did is we looked at data that was produced from the university and from the local community college, STC, and just to see where we are, what does it look like in terms of jobs, pays, and the like. And then from that information, later we together agreed on what areas should we focus on regionally, starting with Hidalgo County, and then hopefully COSTEP and others like that buy into those selected areas, manufacturing, for example, IT, and the like. And I don't know if that's in stone solid yet. We made our recommendations, and hopefully we'll see some communication of what those targets are. We talked about 5 specific areas. I don't want to say what they are, and then maybe something changes, but until the judge and the task force leadership agree on that input that we provided, hopefully then we all start focusing on those 5 areas for the greater good.
Why is it important that this region narrows that list down and says these are the things we want to go after?
Say that again. Why
is it important that a region or a county like Hidalgo says these are the industries we want to go after?
Yeah, well, it's important. First, I want to clarify that the task force from this initiative is not asking individual communities or municipalities to change based on that input. We're just saying keep doing what you're doing, but from a regional standpoint, let's work together regionally on these items, right? So again, to clarify is the communities will continue doing what they're doing, whatever their leadership says they should do, but to support the larger regional thinking in these areas. And why is it important? I think it's important because now from a regional perspective, we can now communicate to, let's say, a foreign direct investor, so they can see what this region has available for them from a site selection process, right? I think historically the Valley has worked in silos, maybe even at a point where they're stepping on each other's toes or maybe against each other for whatever reason or another. And so we haven't worked together from a regional perspective. So I think the judge's vision to corral the cats or circle the wagons, if you will, is a great leadership, thought leadership point that he's bringing out. And there's, I think there's good buy-in from a lot of entities across the region, across the Valley, not just this particular county. To inform you that in my experience from economic development, a foreign direct investor from another country doesn't really care what a small town is doing. And I don't want to mention any particular town, but and they look at what's happening in the Texas-Mexico border, what's happened in the larger Rio Grande Valley region, 5-6 counties worth of region, to include what's happening in Mexico. They see that as an opportunity or not an opportunity, right? So we want to come together and provide that information and provide that larger opportunity for that foreign direct investor, and hopefully have them, from a site selection perspective, look at us differently, right? And that's why this is important. Coming together and selecting these areas of focus is very important.
Was there anything in the data presented by STC or UTRGV that surprised you? What were the key things you saw in those presentations that interested you?
Yes, again, there was a lot of information. What was interesting to me is how the valley has grown and continues to grow in areas like service, food service, and services. Obviously, government and education has always been up there. So I think from an untrained economic developer, we kind of look at those what's happening in those gaps, what are the jobs we haven't filled, and they stay there. And the conversation we're having is that, well, if we continue supporting that from a regional standpoint, then we're not changing anything. We stay in the status quo, and we don't move the needle from a poverty line that we want to do. We want to improve it, right? So by looking at other areas that maybe we haven't been looked at before, for example, more focus in manufacturing, for example, whatever kind of manufacturing, whether it's food manufacturing or an automobile part or a kitchen part, any kind of manufacturing, I think, will create some change if we work together regionally. We talked a lot about critical infrastructure, the power, utilities, and how the lack of might create maybe an opportunity for us to lose a project because we're not prepared from a critical infrastructure standpoint. So those are the things that we talked about today, is what are the things that we need to focus on to create change for the greater good.
You made a point in one of your remarks today. You were saying how you've studied the MSAs over many years, the 3 MSAs we have along the South Texas border region, and we haven't really moved the needle in terms
right.
of...
So important to understand is that an MSA is multiple communities, right? And although there might be 1 or 2 communities within that MSA that are doing great, McAllen, for example, right? Maybe Brownsville or Harlingen, but when you include the whole statistical area, there's some communities that are not doing as well, so it brings down the average, right? From an MSA statistical perspective, the 3 MSAs in the valley have historically been at the bottom of the list. Although you drive around and you might not see it firsthand, but when you look at the poverty rate and when you look at the pay wages at different areas, then you start seeing that, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here, a lot of improvement to make. So that might be a target for us from a Prosperity Task Force to look at is, are we moving the needle as we implement these initiatives? As we look at these targets, are we moving the needle on those MSA numbers, those statistical areas? Although I think that data is collected during the census, so every 10 years, so we won't see, which is a good amount of time, I think. It takes a long time to see the data change based on implementing processes. It's going to take a long time to see those results. So I think using the next census, I think 2020 was the last time we collected data from the census. So 2030 would be an indicator for us to see whether we've done any good or not.
So it's all about jobs and high-paying jobs. I guess another part of the data that is important for all the leaders to follow and understand is the advice from the economists as to which industries are perhaps on the decline, which ones are becoming more automated, which means there'll be less jobs available. That's something you have to factor in as well.
That's right. So many data points to factor in. Demographics. We have what does our working age population look like long term? What does our aging population look like? You can see we have a large aging population, and the healthcare services might change, right? Another example is if policy on the border has changed. USMCA, NAFTA 2, they call it, a sign that created some change. The 69 corridor, the improvements in the bridges has changed, so that's created opportunities for change. So if we're not looking at those things, and then we're just looking at historical data, we're not doing it justice, right? So policy, infrastructure change, and investment in communities creates opportunities for us to look at and make improvements in those areas.
Well, those are all the questions I had, Mario. If I left anything out, anything else you'd like to add to help educate the viewers and the readers on what this task force is doing?
Yes, I think one point to make is that all entities are part of this process, part of an economic development process. The school districts have a role, the community colleges have a role, the technical colleges have a role, and obviously universities have a role. The chambers of commerce have a role, the associations, I'm thinking the manufacturing associations. There's so many entities and the list is long. Not one is going to create change. I think all of us working together regionally will create this change. That
reminds me of something that Mr. Keith Patridge from McAllen EDC said in this meeting, he said we're all in economic development.
That's right.
The schools, the colleges, everybody. It's all about economic development.
That's right, and we need to share each other's tools. I was thinking that here the summer's coming up, and we're going to create a larger footprint of teacher externships and bring teachers into industry so that teachers can see what is industry doing. I think Noble Texas Builders is one of the leading organizations here, private entities that's investing in that. Why? Because industry is saying, hey, school districts, we need you to understand how we've created the change of technology so you can start implementing that in the schoolhouses. And then we've invited now banks and hospital systems so they can also be part of this teacher externship, so the teachers at the schoolhouse can see what industry is doing and they can create a better product in the student to create a workforce of tomorrow.
Well, Mario, thank you so much. We've learned a lot. Thanks for today's interview.
Thank you. That was good.